The shadow of Kilimanjaro slowly shrank behind him as he journeyed west. The land flattened into an endless sea of grass, dotted with acacia trees that stood like lonely sentinels. The air was different here, thick with the scent of wild sage and the hum of a million unseen insects. In the distance, a family of giraffes moved with impossible grace, their long necks swaying like masts of ships on a golden ocean. He paused, mesmerized. The plains were not empty. They were alive with a quiet, powerful rhythm that beat in time with the earth itself. But as the day wore on, the rhythm faded into a monotonous hum. The sun climbed higher, bleaching the colors from the landscape. The sheer scale of the plains began to press in on him. For the first time since leaving his village, a profound sense of solitude washed over him. He was a single speck in an immense, breathing wilderness. Following the advice of a passing herdsman, he tracked a dry riverbed, a snaking scar in the earth that promised water. But the sun was a merciless hammer, and hours later, the riverbed remained stubbornly dry. Thirst clawed at his throat, and every acacia tree looked identical to the last. He slumped against a rock, his hope dwindling with his water supply. The vastness that had been so beautiful now felt like a trap. He thought of turning back, of the safety of the mountain. Then his fingers found a smooth, cool stone from his village. He held it tight, its familiar weight a connection to home, and found the strength to stand up and walk on. As dusk began to bleed purple and orange across the sky, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Not an animal, but something structured. With the last of his strength, he crested a small rise and saw it. A sturdy canvas tent and a dusty green Land Rover parked beside it. Hope, sharp and sudden, pierced through his exhaustion. He moved down the rise slowly, cautiously, not wanting to alarm whoever was there. The scent of wood smoke reached him, a smell of safety and company. He saw a small fire crackling in a ring of stones, and his pace quickened. A young woman emerged from the tent, her brow furrowed in concentration as she adjusted a long-lensed camera. She started when she saw him, her hand instinctively going to a large knife on her belt. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice sharp, her eyes wary. "My name is Kaelo," he said, his voice raspy from thirst. "I am a traveler, not a poacher." He stood with his hands open, showing he meant no harm. "I am trying to reach the Great Falls, Monsieur Tunya." He slowly reached into his pocket and held out the smooth, familiar stone. "This is from my home. It is all I have to offer as proof of my honest heart." The woman, whose name was Alara, studied his face, and the hardness in her eyes softened. She nodded and pointed to a water canister. "Drink," she said simply. The water was the sweetest he had ever tasted. As he drank, Alara watched him, her initial suspicion replaced by a quiet curiosity. She was a researcher, she explained, studying the migration patterns of the wildebeest. She had been on the plains for months, her only companions the animals and the vast, silent sky. They shared a simple meal of roasted meat and dried fruit. Kaelo told her of his village, of the stories of the Great Falls, and of his quest to see them with his own eyes. Alara listened, her gaze distant, as if seeing the world through his words. The next morning, Alara made a decision. Her research could wait a few days. "The falls are on my way," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "I can give you a ride." Kaelo's heart leaped with gratitude. The plains no longer felt like a trap, but a place of unexpected kindness. The journey in the Land Rover was a world away from his trek on foot. The plains flew by in a blur of gold and green. They saw herds of zebra, their stripes a dizzying dance in the heat haze, and a lone cheetah, sleek and powerful, watching them from a termite mound. They talked for hours, their voices a small human sound in the vast wilderness. Kaelo learned about the delicate balance of the ecosystem, of the threats of poaching and climate change. Ilara learned of the traditions of his people, of their deep connection to the land. One evening, they camped near a waterhole. As the sun set, the animals came to drink. A family of elephants, their ancient eyes full of wisdom, moved with a silent, majestic grace. Kaelo and Ilara watched in awe, humbled by the beauty of the natural world. The next day, they found the tracks of a lion. Ilara, ever the researcher, insisted on following them. They found the pride resting in the shade of an acacia tree, the cubs tumbling and playing like kittens. It was a sight of both breathtaking beauty and raw, untamed power. As they drew closer to the falls, the air began to change. A faint mist hung in the air, and the sound of distant thunder grew steadily louder. Kaelo's anticipation was a tangible thing, a knot of excitement in his chest. They reached the falls at dawn. The sight was beyond anything Kaelo had ever imagined. A curtain of water, a mile wide, plunged into a chasm, sending a cloud of mist high into the air. The roar was deafening, a symphony of power and majesty. Kaelo stood for a long time, the spray of the falls on his face, the roar filling his senses. He had done it. He had followed his dream, and it had led him to this place of wonder. He felt a profound sense of peace, a feeling of being exactly where he was meant to be. Ilara touched his arm. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, her voice full of awe. Kaelo could only nod, his heart too full for words. In that moment, he knew that his journey was not just about seeing the falls, but about the connections he had made along the way. As they prepared to part ways, Kaelo gave Ilara the smooth stone from his village. "A reminder of the plains," he said, "and of a traveler you helped." Ilara smiled and gave him a small, carved wooden bird. "And a reminder of the sky," she replied, "and the journeys yet to come."